room, but we'll probably be here till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Are you guys up for that? You told me about your hesitation. So that's not what we're going to do. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. We're going to start this meeting off. Welcome to the first meeting of 2023. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. And hopefully this has been a great start to the new year, even with all the wonderful weather that we've had. But it's going to get better, and we know that. And we've got resources to help us make it get better. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, welcome to the meeting, and we're going to start it off with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I will start it off. I will do the pledge. Everybody stand and salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We've got a lot of new members in the House, and I have had a chance to meet with many of them, and they are so excited to be a part of this board. And for those of us who have been sitting on this board for a minute, we are so excited to have you. So I want to start the meeting off by welcoming our new board members, and I want to do so in alphabetical order. Now, I do want to say that if I mess up your name, that you pull me aside after the meeting and tell me the correct way of saying it, that you also tell all of us the correct way of saying it, because I don't want to butcher anybody's name, right? That's not what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to honor you for being a part of this wonderful organization. So some names I think I can get, and that's probably the wrong thing to think. But anyway, let's go through in alphabetical order. We want to welcome to the SACOG board meeting the board members, and we will start with, in alphabetical order, Josh Chapman, City of Davis. Josh, give him a round of applause if you will. Alice Dowden Calvillo. Alice? Alice is from the city of Auburn, and you know, you've been a familiar face.
I am here again. I served when SACOG used to be across the street on the other side of the freeway. Yes, so you remember those days. And it's Dalvin Calvillo.
All righty, Dalvin Calvillo.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you so much. All right, another familiar face, Lucas Parrish, Yolo County. Bruce, from the city of Roseville. Bruce, tell me how we say your name and your last name loud and proud.
Mr. Chair, Director Hadeshelt is on his way. I don't believe he has an event, and he's going to come over as soon as he can after that event. So he sends his regrets, but hopes to see you soon.
Let's give him a round of applause anyway. Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, just for those new members, the microphones are in front of you. Just press the little button so it goes green, and then you don't have to hold it next to you. It's very lively. It'll pick you up, but just turn it on and turn it off that way. So just look for those mics, and then everybody can hear you in the room and online.
From the town of Loomis, let us welcome Jenny Nisley. From the city of Winters, we know this person, Jesse Lauren. Jesse. And also from the city of Citrus Heights, we have Tim Schaefer. And one of my colleagues, who I really enjoy sitting on the council with, you may hear her call me by a different name other than Councilmember Jennings. She calls me Coach. And I love that name. So welcome to the SACOG board, Councilmember Mai Vang. Come on, let's do a big round of applause for all of our new council members. Okay. We will now move to public comment. I believe that's next on the agenda. Is
Chair
that right?
Jennings, if we could do a roll call?
Okay, let's
to
do that. That's
establish-
important.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Can I
Let's
go ahead
do a
and do
roll call
that
vote.
now?
Thank you.
All right. If you could please say present or here to acknowledge your attendance. Director Baines,
Present.
Director Havisham is absent. Director Bradford,
Here.
Branscombe,
Here.
Houlihan,
Here.
Burris, absent Chapman,
Here.
Desmond, Dowden Calavio, Frericks,
Here.
Frost, Gallardo,
Yes.
Gog, Gore, absent Guerrero, absent Harris, Joyner,
Here.
Nisley, Kozlowski,
Here.
Lauren, Lozano,
Here.
Sander, Zaragoza,
Here.
Schaefer, Stallard, Soon,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
Vang,
Here.
Vice Chair Kennedy,
Here.
Chair Jennings,
Here.
and ex officio member Benapal is absent. Oh, so, I'm sorry, Director Takar is here in his place. Thank you.
Welcome, Director. Okay, we have a quorum? We are good? Thank you very much. Super. Okay, we will now move to public communication, and this is an opportunity for any person wishing to address the board on any item that's not on the agenda. And that's what we want to move to at this point in time. But before we do that, I want to bring up the ultimate public figure, someone that we all know who wanted to come here and wish all of the new board members and the current board members a happy new year and a wonderful start to SACOG board. And that is none other than the incredible Congresswoman Doris Matsui. You know, I gave you your roses when I first came in, and I told you, I said, you know, Sacramento would not be Sacramento if it were not for you and all the great work that you've done and the shoulders that you stand on and the work that your husband did many years ago. You have just been an incredible leader for our region and someone that we know we can always count on. I talk to people about the concept of team. Together, everyone achieves more. You are definitely a teammate for life. And that we can always count on. We know, we love you with all our heart and soul. We know we can count on you. We know you're someone that's going to do what's best for this region. And so I am so happy to call you my friend and to call you a great partner with the region of Sacramento. So another big round of applause for Councilwoman Doris Matsui.
Well, thank you very much, and that's too much of an introduction, really, now. I don't think I can rise up to that. But let me just say, I am just thrilled to be here. I met with you many times as I first got elected in 2005, as we were dealing with storms at that time, too. And we were trying to figure out how we make Sacramento much safer. And what I did was at that time, Katrina happened. And we all had to come together because this was the next at-risk, the second most at-risk city in the country. And we all came together on that. We built stronger levees. We did the JFP at Folsom Dam with another spillway. And what we did here was decide that we had a system approach here and that all of us were in this together. So water just doesn't stop at the district's edge or a city's edge. As you know, it just goes on and on and on. And this is what I look upon with all of you too in SACOG. This is the region. And as we move along, the region itself has taken on a prominence that it never had before. I mean, I understand I probably represent the most urban presence here with the city of Sacramento and West Sacramento and also Elk Grove now. But the urban presence cannot succeed without all of you working together. I know that because I see what happens in Washington when we split ourselves up. We don't do that here in this region, and I'm thankful for that. So that's my preliminary, because I just want to say thank you for everything you do to collaborate here. And I also want to thank Rick Jennings for being a great chairman, right?
Oh, thank you.
I guess you're departing, but you'll never leave us, right?
No.
And the new chairman coming on board, Patrick Kennedy, who I've known for a long time too. both individuals who understand the value of regional cooperation. You know, I had a chance to sit down with the staff a couple of days ago, this really great SACOG staff, and try to get from them what they feel is going to be the most important issues as we move forward. And they were very good because they looked at the whole region and looking to see what is the best emphasis as we move forward. And you know, they were really fabulous because I understand and you all understand that SACOG is a critical regional partner. Thank goodness that this was developed such a long time ago, I guess in the early 2000s. So we all knew that we had to, as a region, move forward together. Each one of us having our own elements that we were proud of, but together we're stronger as a region. And you know, all of you here are here to just make sure that you're spearheading plans and solutions that make this a wider region and a successful region. This is an exciting time to be here. We had the rain, a lot of rain. We were praying for rain. Too much prayers, I think, here. But that is going to be the way of the future, I think. We're going to have to look to the fact that nature is very unpredictable, but we know we probably have more of these atmospheric rivers. And quite frankly, the fact that we have been planning ahead to ensure that our systems will flow in a way that would make it better for all of us. I was just in Wilton yesterday on the levees with my boots, getting a really good orientation. My practice has always been with urban levees, but as they go out to the rural parts too. But the rural part of the county, which I now represent also, is a different place. It's beautiful, farms, but even within the county of that point, where's the rural, it's very diverse from the west to the east. And there are solutions there that are possible, especially in this day and age, where we look to see, especially what the farmers can do. We depend upon them for food, not only for California or for our region, for the nations, also in the world. So we have to make sure they're successful. I mean, you think about agriculture is probably the foremost economic driver in this state. And we want to make sure that they can practice and be able to have their farming, many family farms for generations, and be able to be sustainable and yet be able to look toward the future in a way that they're contributing to the challenges we have to solve the climate crisis. Now, I am the chair of what we call in Congress the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, in which several of us get together, there's 75 of us from various committees in various parts of the country, and we share about what is important in each of our districts and our communities. And we work together to make sure that we not only promote clean energy practices, reduce emissions, but we also look forward to ensuring that we have jobs. And I think this is what we're talking about when we're looking forward to the future, that whatever we do, make sure that we create new jobs and make ourselves more sustainable. You know, I want to tell you that the last couple years, we have built up a legislative package that's signed by the president that we in this region can benefit from so much. Not only the bipartisan infrastructure package, which you look at roads and bridges and things like that, and also the transit solutions there, and also the latest IRA, the Inflation Reduction Package, which has many, many, not only healthcare solutions, but climate solutions, helping us with electrification and also clean energy policies as we move forward. But also another thing I was proud to lead was the Chips and Science Act, which really is going to point us to ensure that we have advanced manufacturing in this country, that we don't have to depend on the rest of the world for our parts and our manufacturing that go all the way from cars to medical devices to national security, everything with semiconductors. So we have opportunities here in this region to take advantage of that. And I intend to make sure that for every single one of these pieces, we get our piece of the pie. And I think what's happened to SACOG has stayed ahead of the game because they've already built a foundation, especially with what we have now, green means go. It is so important for this region. I talk about the fact that our region collaborates and we're in these things together. And honestly, to have such a diverse region come together and look toward the future and what can each of us do? And what SACOG is doing and has done is work with all of you to implement across the region with intentional planning and development, crucial to making sure that we meet our goals moving forward. Now, as our region continues to grow, we know that we're going to have many, many discussions. But as long as we know that we're in this together, we love where we live, we love the region. We want to make sure that our kids and our grandkids share in this love and be able to be a part of this moving forward. I really feel that for all of us here around the table, that's what it's all about, our future. What do we want to see happen in this region? We have made great progress, and I know that, starting from a lot of you here, because we represent different constituencies, different cities, different counties, but all of us know that we can't do it alone. None of us can do it alone. And so for me, I think, and you see this too, you saw what Forbes said, right? The #1 city, Sacramento. The #1 region, the Sacramento region. So let's use that. That is going to be so important. And I also got a missive from somebody who said that one of the environmental, not, it was really the economical, one of the economic reports that said that Sacramento is probably #3 on creating the hubs for economic growth and manufacturing. So think about that too, because these hubs can be located in any part of our region. And if we all work together, we can make sure that we can attract the companies and the talent to have these hubs. And that's where the CHIPS and Science Act comes in. And also the fact that we're already an agricultural center. We also have healthcare here. We have all the elements, including the education institutions we have here too. So I get really excited about all of this because we are at the cusp of taking advantage of everything that we worked on and learned. We are primed because of what all of you've been doing in the last 20 years, and even going back further than that. But now we're ready. And I don't want any of us to take it lightly. And I look to see what I hear from many that I've met with privately. We're ready. We just need to understand that we need to work together and be creative to ensure that we have the right people coming together with the ideas and support each other. So I just want to say thank you very much for all of you for what you're doing. You know, you all have jobs too, besides your public service. And I really, truly appreciate that. You're out in the community, but you also know how important it is to serve others. And that to me is the highest calling. And I thank you very much for all of that. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Bang, I feel like there's a new coach in the room. And she just inspired me to run through a wall. I mean, that was just incredible. We are ready and we will work together. That's our commitment. we will continue to work together in order to achieve greatness in this region. And we thank you for being a partner with us. Give her another round of applause, if you will, please. James, any comment?
No, I never try to go after you, you know that. No, obviously, Congressman, I was with my kids over the MLK weekend, and I took them down to Old Sacramento and showed them how the city was raised 150 years ago, so they understand that we live in a flood-prone and disaster-prone region, but we've been resilient for a long time. And then I took them up on the levee to look at the Yolo bypass, and they were just aghast at what is that inland sea out there. And honestly, you know, I can say, working back in DC for a really long time, you are one of the most hardworking, dedicated, persistent members of Congress that we know, that I know. And we sit here today with your legacy already intact, and a region that truly benefits from your work. So I just can't thank you enough. And to your point about we're ready, we're going to be seeing you a lot this year, because we really do. We have a lot of needs here. We feel like we've done the work to tee up the mega region, a lot of the investments that connect us to the Bay Area, the third track capital corridor. Thank you for being a champion of things that are not just in your district. You lead by example on that. And of course, the Green Means Go program that we're going to try to get some federal funding for this year. So really just thank you from all of us for your leadership. And we'll see you very soon.
Director Frost.
Congresswoman Matsui, I just wanted to say a couple of things. You know, after the past week or two, we've had a lot of storms, and I'm reminded of everything that you've done in this region regarding flooding and preparing us for those catastrophic events, and especially during that time, that 8-hour period during the storms, when 4 of the roads that come in and leave Rancho Murrieta were flooded. So there was no way in or out if someone needed an ambulance or any kind of emergency response. And we were so lucky that nothing happened, but I was reminded of how important it is that it means lives. And I want to thank you for everything you've done. And I know there's more work to do, but I'm on SAFCA also, and I know you've done a lot, and we really appreciate it. All of us do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you so much for everything. We deeply appreciate you being here today and all that you do. And like I say, together, we will do more. I am convinced of that. So let's go back to public comment. And is there anyone that, did we receive any public comment, or is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment?
There are no other public communications.
Okay. All right, then let's move on. If I can take a little privilege here. Mayor Martha Guerrero couldn't be here today for the meeting. Oh, but she's on Zoom now, okay. Because she did send her alternate, Dante Early West, who's a council member in West Sacramento. So I wanted to introduce her to all of you.
And I'm just here to listen, so Martha will be, our mayor will be voting.
Okay.
I will be covered. Yes, thank you. I think Dante's there to learn, so, but yes, thank you so much. I was planning on attending and being a part of today's meeting.
Good to see you. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, then let us move to our consent calendar. We turn over to our consent calendar, and I'm understanding that staff wants to pull item number 5.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Are there any other items that need to be pulled at this time?
Could we pull item 4, please?
Item 4? For a separate vote? Or just for discussion? Okay, okay. All right, any other? Okay, so why don't we take your question first, and then we'll see if we can get, move forward with all the items except for item 5, and then
Okay.
take a separate vote on item 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is about the Trails Plan implementation. This is a really critical item for the region. We've discussed it. There's an implicit need for some sort of prioritization in this. And I want to be sure that this request for a consultant actually addresses that. Because sort of the failure that's been brought up in this trails scenario previously is that we all do our own thing, but we don't necessarily coordinate. So there's a coordination function, but there also has to be some level of prioritization. So that my jurisdiction doesn't suck up all the trail dollars in the region, right? Connecting ourselves to nobody around us. That would be silly. So that specific sort of step from where we were, which was independent actions, to coordinated action, I want to be sure that's actually in the request for the consultant, that we have that critical discussion. It won't be easy, but I think it's necessary.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Director Sander. And again, I think for some of the new members as well, I appreciate you also just flagging the importance of this, right? There aren't a lot of things that so physically can connect every corner of this region. And this Trails Plan was about 2.5 years in the making. I do want to remind all of you, and obviously, look, if there's something in the RFP that we can do to tease that out, we haven't released the formal RFP. This is your authorization to go get it done, and so we can follow up and make sure that concern is embedded. There was a prioritization at the very end of our effort under the study itself to develop the plan, the last task. And in fact, some of you may remember, we actually debated this quite a bit. What does it mean to sort of, if there's 1,000 miles of new trail network to connect every corner of this region, we can't do it all at once, right? Some of it has to go first. Some of it is a bit more ripe to go. And we actually did have I think we had 3 categories of basic readiness, right? So we knew where to focus. We knew where to go try to get some state funding and help your jurisdictions go for things. So I want to make sure that, you all are aware that, and that concept of prioritization, by the way, is going to be another theme that comes back at this board quite a bit this year, and fairness and everything else. So I do think we have some of that, and I want to make sure everybody's aware of it. And if there's something else that you and others want to see in the RFP, looking back at Christine Svensk, our transportation director here, certainly we can make sure that's the case.
Yeah,
The
I think it's
reason,
it's probably just a slight enhancement under bullet governance.
if I could just sort of end on just for a second. The reason we're doing an RFP is because we do not want this to be a great plan that doesn't go anywhere, right? And so we need to accelerate the development of this. We want to build 1,000 miles of trail in this region as quickly as we can, and we need to figure out how to get it done, who oversees it, who champions it, how do we finance it, right? How do we maintain it? Where's the revenue come from? So those are the questions that we want to ask in this. This is an implementation and acceleration initiative. But absolutely, if there's something on prioritization, we're happy to make sure it's teased out in the RFP itself.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. James, I just had a follow-up question. So from a governance perspective in that RFP, if maybe you or Christina could talk about what you envision there, because I'm trying to distinguish it from, we're talking about our funding rounds too, and as SACOG, makes decisions and funding for the funding rounds, I don't know that we have a separate governance structure. So when I see this for the trails, I'm just kind of curious what you're envisioning from a governance structure.
Yeah, and I think that got some people's attention. Whenever you say governance, people seem to sort of, what do you mean exactly by that? Here's what we mean. As we discovered, the reason it took 2.5 years to develop a regional trails plan is it is not just 28 cities, and it's not just all of you sitting around this table. It's actually all of the utility districts, flood control, reclamation districts. There are so many special districts involved in this. Everybody has a tiny piece. Nobody has the whole. And so we want to ask, who is the champion to make sure that we get some accountability and we get this thing accelerated? That is the simple question on this. I'm not interested in creating more levels of government. I hope you know. It could be SACOG. It could be a nonprofit organization. But I can tell you that there are, or a committee of this body or something else that is just, gets together, but that group has to champion it. This is not a SACOG proposal that is just entirely SACOG. This is a regional vision that requires regional leadership. So I don't know, we don't know the answer to that question, but we want to ask it. So somebody owns it, somebody moves forward, somebody's accountable, and somebody's a champion.
So just so I can phrase it another way, so as implementing agencies, instead of a city or county, taking funds and working with a utility or special district, perhaps a separate, more regional governance structure might help expedite acquisition of the right of way, or is that what you were thinking from that?
I want to make sure that all of you as cities and counties that are building trails continue to build the trails. I don't think there's a new, I don't think it's a new authority that suddenly takes over, actual construction and everything else. But I do think that we need to think about as I said, a sort of a body or a group or, that may be public and private that actually can champion and I do think actually there is an interesting question of acquisition. So that is, I think, a question we need to talk about. If corridors come up and and they'll come up, as you all know, they'll come up quickly, right? Are we just going to leave it to all of the, everybody locally to go? Or is there somebody or some organization that can actually be in the business of acquiring corridors if they're abandoned? That's a really important question. But I don't see a new level of regional government that is going to, take this over. I see a coordinating body to champion it and make it happen.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
If I may comment on that, our experience in Folsom, where we have a significant trail system, is that the kind of sizzling edge is always the most complicated bit, where we interconnect to other agencies that are adjacent to us. So the place, coordinating between us and state parks or us and San Juan Water District and others to be able to bridge we have a couple of instances where we had, maybe 100 feet of trail that would connect Folsom to Folsom Lake, or, a couple hundred feet that would connect us to Granite Bay, but it passed through some land that was owned by San Juan Water District. Having it just be the city of Folsom going, please, 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 is not effective all the time. It needs, if there was a regional group of us that was, had a master plan that said, hey, look, we really need a connection right here, and it wasn't just us trying to do it.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. So I'm for this as long as we can keep it focused on this particular thing.
Good comments. Yeah.
And David, I'll nominate you to be the champion if you want.
I'm definitely looking for more work.
Chair Jennings, Director Guerrero has her hand raised.
Okay, thank you. I see now.
Hello, Chair Jennings. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask quickly, as far as a rollout process, once some information is gathered, what is the process for it to be vetted or to bring, or to convene some level of discussion for input as you move forward? Is that process, considered at this point, or is it part of the contractor who is going to prepare and develop something and then bring it back to us? And I just want to say that I'm very supportive of this recommendation.
Director Guerrero, James Corliss. I'm so glad this is getting such interest. This is a good sign. I love the questions. The way we would typically do this, and obviously, I'll tell you, by the way, we've just wrapped up our 28 cities and counties, every single jurisdiction. We've come to every single one of your jurisdictions now and given you all updates about the plan. And then we've given you a little, sense of how do we implement the plan? And this trails plan is the thing that gets all the attention, all the questions, which we should take to heart, right? Like we would for many projects, Director Guerrero, this will come through a committee. A committee will oversee the RFP and this work, right? So this today is the authorization. It's in the budget, so we don't have, it's already planned for authorization to release the RFP, get people on board. And what's interesting, I will say, about trails, kind of like nobody owns it, but hundreds of agencies have a piece of it, is it actually cuts across all three of your standing committees, which is why this is so important. It doesn't naturally have a home. It could be in transportation, it could be in land use and natural resource, could be in policy. So I think we could work with the chair-elect and figure out exactly which sort of is the home committee for this. If the board wants to take this on and get updates, that is your prerogative. So we will not go away and develop this and come back to you with a final product. I can assure you that.
Is it also the case that as it goes through the committee process, it'll come back to this board again?
Absolutely. And that is in some ways, again, that is the call for the board leadership, right? And all of you, like, hey, I'd really love to hear more about this trails, RFP and the work here. So we can do that if you are so inclined.
Yeah, and I think something as important as this subject is, it should be a process that we should seriously consider, is to go through the committee process and come back before this council again, so we can continue to have the discussion, because you bring up very good points as far as the importance of the Trails Network.
Chair Jennings, Director Gallardo has her hand raised.
Please. Director?
Thank you. And thank you for the great questions. I really appreciate my fellow directors. They hit some of the questions I had concerned. I think the concern I had initially was, is this a group that's coming in to tell us how the connections are going? And I am taking it now as this is a group to advocate, to help us, because we have the same situation with some of our public utilities for sewer and water, have easements, and we'd like to be able to use those passageways for trails for our easements. So I'm taking this as this is going to be someone to help us as an advocate and help us smooth those conversations. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Okay, are there any other questions on items 1 through 4? Any other questions on item 4? And if not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Sorry, who moved it?
Guerrero?
Okay, Guerrero moved it and seconded. Somebody came in close second or third. Okay.
Sutsky.
You got me over here looking left and then over here to the right. Okay. Reflexes are getting older. But,
All right,
would you please call roll?
thank you. Director Baines,
Aye.
Haudashelt,
Aye.
Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe,
Aye.
Houlihan,
Aye.
absent Chapman,
Aye.
Desmond, Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Frericks,
Aye.
Frost, Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Gore absent Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Nisley, Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lauren,
Aye.
Lozano,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Stallard, Soon,
Aye.
Thomas, Vane, West, absent Vice Chair Kennedy,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to item 5. And my understanding is staff Garrett Ballard Rosa will present this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Appreciate you pulling that for us. Just a quick update for the item as written. And again, this relates to one of the awards that this board made last November of the first ever Green Means Go funding round. So you approved 5 awards of $3.2 million. We're really excited about that. You also authorized James, Executive Director, to move forward with those awards. Thank you. It doesn't rise. I confirm the podium doesn't rise. Anyways, basically, we've been moving forward with the awards, and one of them has a series of partners involved. And we just wanted to make sure that the partners and the collaboration was listed out. And so just a brief update to the consent item as written. Bear with me, I'm going to read the staff recommendation. That the SACOG board authorize the executive director to approve the assignment of the San Juan Apartments Offsite Improvements Green Means Go Award in consultation with Sacramento County, the City of Sacramento, and the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, or SHRA. The assigned agency would administer this award as a long-term loan in support of off-site infrastructure improvements needed for the San Juan Apartments project. Further, the SACOG board directs the SACOG executive director to prepare a support letter affirming the $2 million funding award and conditions. Again, providing some clarification to this $2 million award you approved last November in Green Means Go. What I just read would update the staff item as written. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, directors, this would be an opportunity for questions or comments. Now would be the time to do so.
Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I need that in English.
Yeah, okay.
What's the background on that? Just
Yeah, great point. So there's two parts of it. One is the partners involved. And so generally these awards go to the city or the county, the SACOG member agency. This is going to be in consultation with SHRA, the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. So we just wanted to clarify that we're working with those three partners, right? The member agency, Sacramento County, City of Sacramento, and SHRA. So that's part A. And then
And exactly what is the funding going to be applied to by the recipient?
exactly. So that was part of the action that the board took, this board, in November. This is one of the Green Means Go awards through the early activation category. It's going to go towards the San Juan Apartments project in Stockton Boulevard. It's 150 unit housing development to help activate the Stockton corridor. This Green Means Go funding award is going to be for the off-site infrastructure to help that project move forward.
Thank you.
I'll take a question from Director Kennedy first.
Not a question, just a comment. This project actually is in the district that I represent. It's also in, it's a combination city-county, which, while that may not sound regional, it was the smoothest and best example I've seen of cross-jurisdictional cooperation between the city and county planning staffs, and something that we can all look at. But to answer questions about this project, it's going to eventually be approximately 150 units of workforce housing, as well as in the phase 2 homeless and senior housing with permanent supportive services attached to it. And I will just say that the Sacramento Housing Redevelopment Agency and the county put in about $20 million. That $2 million sounds like a small amount, but it was the difference between this project happening and not happening. So, you know, I really appreciate the board's support on it.
Approval, moved by Desmond, correct? Seconded by Member Vang, Director Vang. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify, the motion to approve would be to approve as amended by staff as presented here today.
Okay, got it. Lynette, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, let me ask the question first. Any public comment before we move forward?
No
Okay,
public comment.
thank you. Would you please call the roll?
Director Baines,
Aye.
Howdeshelt,
Aye.
Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe,
Yes.
Houlihan,
Aye.
Burris, absent Chapman, Desmond, Dowden Calavio, Frericks, Frost, Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog, Gore, absent Guerrero,
Aye.
Harris, Joyner,
Aye.
Nisley, Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lauren, Lozano,
Aye.
Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Yeah, aye.
Stallard,
Aye.
Soon,
Aye.
Thomas, Vane, Vice Chair Kennedy,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, we've had an exciting meeting so far, and it is about to get even better. This is the opportunity to induct our new board leadership. This is a very, very exciting time. Anytime leaders step up to additional positions of leadership, it's a very important time. And I think we have the right people at the right time to move SACOG to where we all want to go together. So I would like to have Director Kennedy as the chair-elect to please join our legal counsel at the podium to administer the oath of the chair to Chair-elect Kennedy, and Director Zaragoza will be sworn in also as vice chair.
All right, raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Patrick Kennedy,
I, Patrick Kennedy,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will defend and support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance,
that I will bear true, one more time,
that I will bear true faith and
that
allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
that I will faithfully and well discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter,
upon which I am about to enter.
and during such times as I am chair
And during such time as I am chair
for Sacramento Area Council of Government, SACOG,
for Sacramento Area Council of Governments, SACOG,
and Capital Valley Regional Service Authority
and Capital Valley Regional Service Authority
for freeways and expressways safe.
for freeways and expressways safe. You're making this up as you go.
I'm trying my best to break it up. There's one more sentence. I will faithfully discharge
Faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of chair
the duties of the office of chair
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
To the chair, if I may, Counselor, if I may, I recommend next time you swear someone in, they get a written copy of the,
Now, this is the first task, Director Branscombe. This is to discourage all of you from wanting to be board chair in the future.
All right, so now we get to do it again. I'll do the shorter one for you. I, Michael Saragosa, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. The duties upon which I am about to enter. And during such times as I am vice chair for Sacramento Area Council of Government, SACOG, and Capital Valley Regional Service Authority for Freeways and Expressways safe. Safe. I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of vice chair according to the best of my ability. Congratulations.
Okay, I have two more duties that I'd like to do before I turn this gavel over to our new chair. I want to acknowledge from the city of Roseville, Bruce Howdelshill. Bruce, how you doing? Welcome. Glad you could be here. Okay.
Wish I could be there in person. Apologize.
We'll get you next time, I promise. Okay, and my last duty as your chair, which I have enjoyed tremendously, is to turn this gavel over to our chair, Patrick Kennedy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, and I actually have the easiest job first, and that's to ask Mr. Corliss to come to the podium, as well as our esteemed former chair, Mr. Rick Jennings.
I don't know if anybody noticed, but Chair Jennings hesitated just a moment there,
Yes.
just passing the gavel over. I wasn't sure if that was really going to happen. And by the way, my wedding vows were easier than that, so I don't know. what kind of a commitment this is. All right. Well, it is an honor and a privilege to begin a recognition of our outgoing chair. We had an orientation this morning for the 8 new board members. Welcome, 8 new board members. And we just touched on a bunch of stuff, including the work plan or the successes from last year in 2022. And I was looking at that document and reminding myself of last year and thinking, so much of that would not have been possible without our chair's leadership. And so to begin this recognition, I want to honor our outgoing chair with a plaque that just is a small token of our appreciation. There are more tokens coming. And if I think about what was in that work plan last year, and I think about a brand new strategic plan for this agency that we haven't had in 12 years, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in this meeting later. I think about the really hard work of racial equity and the really hard topic that this board undertook and the hard conversations we had and Rick's leadership over the 2-year period and your partnership with former Chair Gore in 2021, your leadership of the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group for 2 years, and I've paid so much attention to how you lead and how you enter hard conversations and how inclusive you are. I mean, we use the word inclusion, we sort of throw it around sometimes. I think you embody inclusion, because you make people feel like they belong. You make people feel like you don't care about their viewpoint. You just care about what they are thinking. And honestly, the work, and I think the progress we've made, and I know it's been hard and challenging progress around racial equity, would not have been possible without your leadership. And then I think about the trails plan that we just had all the questions on, and Rick said, this is the thing I want to champion this. I want this done, and I want to make sure we get it built. It is not just a plan that sits on a shelf or a website. And your vision and what your vision of trying to do in your district and in Sacramento and the Youth Leadership Academy, youth in your district, in your city, and here we have a Youth Leadership Academy and your engagement in that. And I too just want to say on behalf of all the staff, how inspired they have been for you. You and Bonnie have come to our staff meetings. You have talked to them about your role and your style of leadership and the importance of racial equity and inclusion. And I just want to end my presentation by showing the book here. This is a book called The Sum of Us by Heather McGee. And the title, I think, says it all, which is, we think about issues of racial equity. It is not I lose and you win, or you lose and I win. It is about the sum of us. It is about everybody winning. It is about lifting everybody and understanding the differences, whether it's by race, by income, or by place. This is the book that you helped lead the board in a discussion on. We haven't done a lot of that in terms of a book club, and our staff has, because it meant so much to them, has signed the book, and this is for you. And on behalf of all of us, you're inspiring. You lead with hope and optimism and love, and really thank you so much for your dedicated service to the SACOG board and to SACOG. So thank you, Rick.
So I told James, I said, I'm really good at giving out acknowledgement and praise and love. I'm really good. I'm not good at getting it. And so, but to whom much is given, much is required. And the greatest thing that has happened in my life, I used to think was this Super Bowl ring. And then I used to think it was my children that were born. And I've always thought that it was my wife who stood by my side for 44 years, right? Always thought that. But the greatest thing that has happened to me recently has been to be a part of this organization. And I told my board that. I said, all you newbies who are here to serve your city, but get some regional experience. And if you have the opportunity to get on a board like SACOG, this is the board where you got a bigger team and you can do more and you can accomplish so much, right? I say, and it's just the greatest thing in the world. So the greatest thing that has happened to me recently in my life is to be a part of this. And I thank each and every one of you for accepting me just as I am, for being a part of my family. And I consider you all family, right? I consider you all brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. I love all of you with all my heart and soul. And there is nothing that you can ask me for that I wouldn't do for you. So thank you so much for allowing me to be your chair for 1 year. I hope you had some fun, because I can't run a boring meeting. That's just not in my DNA. But thank you so much, and I look forward to what life has in front of us. Go ahead, Patrick. I got my family. I got to look through some love.
Chair Kennedy, I think he might be running again.
Well, Rick, you missed the receptionist. Okay. With that, thank you, Rick. I'd like to, at this time, open it up to the board if there are comments and anything that you would like to say about the former chair. Now's the time. Yes.
Well, Rick, again, it was an honor and a privilege to serve under your leadership. And, you know, anytime I'm willing to suit up with you, Coach, and, you know, and do whatever we can for the region. So again, thank you for your leadership. And again, it was an honor to serve under your leader. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ballard.
Rick, you are sweeter than a honeycomb, you know what I mean? Jeez. But you have figured out kindness, and you are a role model for kindness for all of us. And the way you treat everybody is just really over the top. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Awesome.
Mr. Frost.
Oh, Rick, I just want to thank you for your leadership this year. I know there were, some difficult conversations. We have a large board and we don't all come from the same place. And you had the ability to somehow bring us together with kindness and respect. And I really appreciate your leadership and wish you all the best now that you don't have to. I think it's a heavy load, the chair of the board of SACOG. So congratulations on a great year and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you.
Going around. Lucas.
Yeah, Rick, a couple of things. I mean, I think James said such eloquent comments, especially around your work on the race equity inclusion efforts. I would say that a few quick points. One, I was not going to miss this meeting. No way, no how. Whether or not I was a director or not, I would have been here to recognize you. A couple quick points. One, I am so grateful for all I've personally learned from you. That is just one thing there's a whole suite of items that I just am so grateful for, but I've just personally learned a lot from you and your leadership style and getting to sit close to you and work with you sort of hand in hand. Together everyone achieves more. That is something, certainly people have said that over the years, but you exemplify that. I'm really grateful for that. And then also, after the murder of George Floyd, when we sort of in the 2020 year during the pandemic year, when we sort of initiated the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group and that effort, you brought it to life and have just like breathed so much life into it. I'm so grateful for that. So thank you for all your work. I look forward to many more future collaborations together.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. Rick, I can't really add more than what's already been said, but I know you feel uncomfortable when more people pile it on, so I'm happy to do it. But, you know, honestly, seriously though, we go back a long ways from when we first got on the council to our respective councils together. And so I always have that cherish that special memory with you. But to Lucas's point, you know, you, not just on the Race Equity Inclusion Committee, but your leadership throughout this board, you weren't just inclusive in your leadership. You were going to grab all of us and make sure we were part of things and going forward together. And I felt that personally from you, and I saw you do that with others. And that's, to me, that's just something that really stands out about your style of leadership. It must be when you have a Super Bowl ring, you know how to invoke that kind of leadership. But nonetheless, it was really much appreciated. And thank you for such a great year.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say, Rick, congratulations. I'm really glad you got rid of this dumpy job because you and I have important work to do on the side with regard to mentorship of young people in certain communities. And I've been holding off a conversation with you until you got rid of this thing. And then we can move on to that other important work that I know you care a lot about. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Very good. Congratulations.
Put me on speed dial, please.
Yeah, Rick, I wish I knew more people that were like you. You have the ability to make everyone comfortable around you. By doing that, you bring the best out of us. And that's a great leadership, and that's a great friendship. And it was just privileged to serve here with you and with everybody here. And I feel so fortunate to be part of this group, and thank you so much for everything you have done.
Hey, this.
I got passed up. Sorry about that. That's okay. You know, Rick, so many people have talked about your leadership and your person, how you've helped them personally, inspire them personally. I am not an exception to that. We can talk about all day how effectively you ran this organization, but your personal touch and the way you have to include everybody, I resonated with an example. And this is a very basic example. Leadership is hard to define. It's kind of like art or music. You can't really describe it, but you know when you see it. You're that. When we went on that trip to, you may or may not remember this, but we were in Virginia, and we were walking down an abandoned railroad corridor that used to be converted into a park, wide sidewalks and everything. We're all walking as a group. I was near the back. You were near the back. Excuse me. And there's, in the middle of the sidewalk, there is some evidence of canine presence. We all walked around it, over it. Somebody walked through it, but you quietly, without even drawing attention to anything, he was in the back of the group, made a U-turn, grabbed a napkin or whatever from wherever, picked it up, threw it away. Didn't say a word. And now the little nuances that you see and you pick up about a person and talk about their character. I come in here to literally talk shit about her outgoing. But however, you know what? That was an indicator of what else lies behind that heart of yours. And the fact that you were so willing and so effectively able to share it with the rest of us is much appreciated. I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I remember that to this day. I do.
Oh, no, do you?
Great.
Well, Rick, I'll just add my voice to the chorus and thank you for your service. You know, I've only been in this business for a couple of years, but I watch other local elected officials and I've watched you here certainly in SACOG and certainly throughout Sacramento County when I've encountered you. And you certainly are someone who has a style and approach, philosophy that I certainly emulate and want to live up to. And you know, you watch people and you see how they are when no one else is looking. And that's a great illustration. And you are the real deal, because you are like this in every aspect of your life, whether it's at a SACOG meeting, a city council meeting, or just interacting with anybody out on the streets. And you're just, your level of inclusiveness, how you honor and lift up different perspectives, different opinions. So people, they feel comfortable around you, feel comfortable being part of the table, being engaged in the conversation. So thank you for that. And thank you for your service and your friendship. Thank you.
Well, Rick, it's been an honor to serve with you, but then I remember watching you in Super Bowl 11. So, and then but decades later, I never would have thought to be on the same team as you.
You'll always be a teammate, my friend, always.
So going back to sorry.
I'm sorry.
Can I get one in real quick?
Yes.
Just going back to the Super Bowl ring and the Super Bowl, huge Raiders fan. You know, we win some, we lose most, but I mean, it is what it is. When you're a diehard Raiders fan, that you know what that's like. But I really become a fan of yours. I mean, to see what you've done and make all of us feel like we're a member of that team, right? It's been a great opportunity, and it's really been a privilege to be able to serve under your leadership. And I look forward to working with you in the future as well. Absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to the screen. Director Guerrero.
Thank you so much. Rick, I just want to say that I greatly appreciate your leadership. I've learned a lot from you. I appreciated your active listening skills, validating our diverse opinions and views, and you know, pushing things around where you're able to level set and bring some harmony back, where we are working collaboratively. And I think that's a huge boost for an organization like this. You know, we had a challenging year behind us. So I just want to thank you for, you know, being able to level set some really intense discussions and keeping us working collaboratively. Thank you so much for that work that I knew was really hard.
Thank you.
Director Howdeshell.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I've only had a little bit of time with Rick Jennings, Councilman Jennings, and I've appreciated that time, and I look forward to spending more time with him. You know, thank you for your service to SACOG. And as a graduate of the University of Maryland, thank you for your leadership on the field when we were an ACC school, right? I go back, I was back at the Ohio State game last year. Still not comfortable saying Big Ten, but thank you for your leadership and fear the turtle.
Mean as bad as animal in the world.
Rick, hard to add anything to what's been said, but I just wanted to echo that and say thank you for your leadership, your service to the region, to this board, to the community. And I think if there's anything that we could use to describe your leadership, it's been said, but I would just summarize it as a servant leader. And thank you for that in your example.
Thank you.
Any others? Yes, sir.
Rick, I'm not going to add a whole lot, but thank you for your leadership and your willingness to include all. You know, the interesting thing that I take from our time together is that I don't know that I've ever heard you say my district when you're here. It's truly a regional view of things, and so I appreciate your time and your leadership.
Any others? Okay, well, I'm going to say a few things. First of all, back in 2008, when Rick retired from the school board, I had the privilege of following him on the school board in Sac City Unified. So this isn't a position I'm not accustomed to. But I will say a few things, and that's that, you know, I will agree to everything that has been said here today. Rick is not only my council member, by the way, and a friend of mine and my partner in so many ways, because our districts do overlap. And, you know, working with Rick is always a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry that we weren't more in person in the last, so I could have, you know, provided more of the typical vice chair services that you do. But, you've been very inclusive of including me on conversations with staff and helping me along the way to prepare me to become the chair. I will say that when we had our retreat, and you remember this, I'm sure, and Rick Jennings gave one of his Rick Jennings performances and inspired us all and, made us feel really good about being members of SACOG board and a member of this region. Made us, just fired us up. So I walked with Rick back out to his car and I said, I want to thank you for those words and let you know that I'm screwed. Earlier, James says that he makes it a habit not to follow Rick. I don't have that luxury. And so, these are tremendous shoes to fill, and I do not want the board to have any unrealistic expectations. You're going from the coach to the equipment manager. But, it's truly been a pleasure watching you, learning from you, and serving with you. And I will be looking forward to your counsel in the coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you. There you go. Okay, if we're done with that, thank you. I want to also, before we move on to action items, I want to point out that the committee schedule is in front of you, and our clerk, Lynette, has also emailed out a roster. I'm going to just speak on this for 30 seconds. And I remember when I was a vice chair of a committee years ago, and the next year I wasn't. And I thought, what did I do wrong? Who did I tick off? And as I went through this process, and former chairs, I'm sure, will back me up on this, you realize that it's hard to make these assignments. You have to balance urban and rural, you have to balance city and county, you have to balance where in the region those jurisdictions lie. And by the time all those dots cross, those lines cross, then you still have people who should have leadership positions on these committees. But unfortunately, there's so many. So if you're disappointed, I apologize. We really James and I and staff put a great deal of time into considering this. But I do want to thank particularly Directors Bradford, Gallardo, and Thomas for stepping up to be committee chairs, as well as former Chair Gore for stepping up to be our mega region rep, as well as the vice chair for being our CalCog rep. And also on the list, you'll see there is the two other, for the Race and Equity Inclusion Working Group, which I have asked Mr. Jennings to chair and continue to provide leadership there. And as well as we will continue the Delta Protection Commission appointee, which is Paul Steele from the city of Ileton. So we'll have opportunities for other services we get down the agenda later today, but please take a look at that. Contact Lynette if there's a scheduling problem that you cannot overcome and we need to make some adjustments. We'd be glad to do so. And with that, we will move on to item number 6, which is the public hearing for unmet transit needs in Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba counties, and the cities therein. And we will have Barbara Von Bechtold from SACOG staff to present.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to give a little background on the unmet transit needs process, and then we can open our public hearing. So the State Transportation Development Act, or TDA, requires SACOG as the 4-county regional transportation planning agency to make annual unmet transit needs findings for the Sacramento Regional Transit District and all the jurisdictions that are eligible to use TDA funds. A similar process is conducted in El Dorado County by the El Dorado County Transportation Commission and in Placer County by the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. SACOG must hold a final public hearing before the board prior to unmet transit needs findings for next fiscal year, 23-24, that are finalized. The final public hearing is being held prior to bringing the recommended findings to the board in February to allow time to analyze any new comments we might receive today. So I'd like to ask that we open the public hearing, and if anyone's here in person, we have comment forms over there just so we can get everyone's information.
Thank you. Prior to opening up the public hearing, I'll ask if there's any questions from the board. Okay, seeing none, then I will open up the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who are present or on the phone or on Zoom who would like to address this issue at this time?
Chair Kennedy, there's no one online, and I don't see anyone with a comment card.
Thank you very much. With that, we will close the public hearing. And that's all of the actions that needs to be taken today. So thank you very much, board. Next item is item number 7, the funding round working group charge. And we will hear from Christina Svensk.
Hi, good morning. Christina Svensk, Director of Transportation at SACOG. I first want to welcome all the new board members. I'm really excited to work with you, and it's good to see some of the returning members as well. So look forward to the year ahead. Last fall, the concept of a funding round working group was brought to both the Transportation Committee and the Board of Directors as an effort to help shape the development of the new funding round that we're going to embark on in 2024 and respond to some of the challenges that we've seen in previous rounds, as well as funding constraints that some of our partners have identified to us over the years. So after confirmation from the board at the end of 2022, to move ahead with this, SACOG staff developed a charge, which is in front of you today in your staff report. The goal of this effort is to provide an in-depth understanding of what really goes into a funding round, some of the basics, develop a way to address some of these concerns that we've heard in some of our funding constraints and challenges that we have in the region, and build on some of the successes from previous funding rounds. There has been a lot of work that's gone into some of the previous framework. So in addition to a board of directors based working group, just want to remind that we are also going to do a parallel effort with directors of transportation and planning and public works so that we have a really robust conversation going forward and that there's interaction between both staff level and the board here as we move forward. That would also include Caltrans partners, transit agencies, as well as the Sacramento Transportation Authority. So really looking at this as a comprehensive effort. It's really important that we have representation on this board from all 6 counties. At the end of 2022, in some of the previous discussions, we did ask for interest from board members. And we did get interest expressed by several board members, including directors Branscombe, Harris, Joyner, Lozano, Soon, and Thomas. We did get representation, a request from Director Frericks. He also volunteered to participate, but I'm not sure with the makeup if we'll need to identify a new representative potentially from Yolo County. And just another point, Director Clark Kretz, prior to her departure, she had requested that there be a Loomis representative as well. So I want to point that out, that might be something to consider moving forward. So the action before you today is to adopt the funding round working group charge. And once this is adopted, representatives will be confirmed through Chair Kennedy, and staff will work to schedule the first meeting in February. The partner agency working group will likely be scheduled for March too. So want to kick this one off first. So with that, I welcome any questions that you might have on this item.
Questions from the board? Director Frost.
I was wondering, Chair, if the working group is going to bring back updates, will we have input, or will they just bring back their final recommendations and we'll have that conversation? How does that work?
Yeah, I think the intent is absolutely to move the conversation to the board as much as we can and provide updates and have full conversations as we continue to develop, especially when we get into like the framework development and evaluation criteria development. It's really important that we hear from all of the board, not just the funding round working group. So you'll absolutely be looped in.
And you'll be, and they'll also be coordinating with the different jurisdictions.
Correct.
Staff.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Desmond.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate the presentation. And I appreciate, I think you mentioned building on some of the improvements that were made the last funding round, which certainly preceded my tenure, but it sounds like certainly there were some improvements in terms of efficiencies and prioritization and listening to some of the voices of local jurisdictions. So that will be preserved. It's not as if this is starting from scratch, correct?
Absolutely. I think one of the really important things is recognizing what's working and what we can build on, but also what's not working and how we can make improvements. So, yep.
Thank you.
Any others? Okay, I will say that, first of all, Lynette, is there any public comment on this?
There's no public comment.
Okay. I will say that if there's any members whose names were not listed earlier and you would like to throw your hat in to be a member of this group, please send that to Lynette. Hopefully, if you could do that in the next 2 days, we'd like to make this decision in the next week or two so that we can get business going. And with that, if there's a motion and a second, if you could also state your name when you do so, it helps the clerk to gather that information. Is there a motion?
Joyner moves approval.
Sarah, second.
Second by Baines.
I would say that the vice chair squeaked under the line on that. Please call the roll.
Thank you. Director Baines?
Aye.
Haudashelt?
Aye.
Thank you. Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Aye.
Burris? Absent Chapman? Desmond? Stoughton Calvillo? Frericks? Frost? Gallardo?
Aye.
Gog? Gore absent Guerrero?
Aye.
Harris?
Yes.
Joyner?
Aye.
Nisley? Kozlowski?
Yes.
Lauren? Lozano?
Aye.
Sander?
Aye.
Zaragoza?
Aye.
Schaefer?
Aye.
Sallard? Soon?
Aye.
Thomas? Vane? West absent Vice Chair Kennedy?
Aye.
Excuse me, Chair Kennedy? Thank you. And Director Jennings?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is item number 8, which is the charge for Race Equity Inclusion Working Group. And I believe Casey Lizon is here to make a presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair Kennedy, and good morning, members of the board. Another working group charge before you today for your approval. For a bit of background, particularly for our newer board members, SACOG's Race Equity and Inclusion Initiative was started in 2020 by then SACOG Chair Frericks. And that over those 2 years, what the SACOG board has done with that initiative is to try to explore and understand how SACOG, as a council of governments, as a metropolitan planning organization, can advance racial equity in its work. And so there have been a couple of iterations of the working group. The most recent one, which was you adopted a charge in 2021 under the then Chair Gore's leadership, was a combination of SACOG board members and public members. That charge carried their work for 2 years. The REI working group developed a number of very foundational pieces of work for SACOG. One of them was a statement, a racial equity statement of change and commitment that your board adopted early last year. There was a lot of work to influence the public engagement pieces of your blueprint plan that also came before the board. There was also a lot of weighing in on the shaping of the Engage, Empower, Implement program, which is one of the funding programs that you created. And then most recently, the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group created a racial equity action plan for SACOG, which your board adopted at the end of last year. A key piece of that racial equity action plan, there were 3 components focusing on SACOG's operations, programs, and board practices. So a key piece of that plan is that the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group be reformed again and really provide some oversight and championing of the implementation of the action plan. So we bring to you again a charge. This charge is different from the last one, and it is focused on the implementation of the Racial Equity Action Plan. And because it's focused on implementation and because SACOG really works in partnership with government agencies and community partners, we have expanded the membership of the public members to include government representatives, and you can see that in the list. With that, I will stop and see if there are any questions or comments on this.
Questions or comments from the board?
Chair Kennedy? Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing this forward. In looking at the list of the community members that are suggested to take part in this program, as well as the government members, I do have two suggestions, because in looking at this, I am not entirely sure that perhaps the rural perspective is in this space. Equity and inclusion, we all know, look different in different parts of our very, very diverse region. And especially in terms of the challenges that they face in terms of equity and inclusion, as well as the opportunities and solutions, they're going to look different. And certainly the recent storms in the last couple of weeks, have highlighted also how our very diverse region is affected in terms of the disasters that we are seeing more and more in terms of transportation, as well as the social outcomes for those communities in those different regions. So I have a suggestion to add on the community member side some factor, and I don't know quite what that working group would look like, but that meets the adaptation and resiliency category. I think that would be a helpful voice in looking at race, equity, and inclusion across our region. And as in terms of the government sector, having a disaster preparedness and response member that also I think would be a helpful voice in looking at inclusion and equity for all across our region. So those are my two recommendations to add to the members of the working group.
Excellent comments. Mr. Corliss, you and I will talk about that offline. Great. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Director Thomas. Appreciate it. Is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
No public comment. Then I will entertain a motion.
Martha Guerrero, move to approve.
Second by Baines.
Guerrero and Baines. That's who we get over here. Okay, sorry there, Ms. Mayor. We will go with Director Lauren. Please call the roll.
Thank you. Director Baines?
Aye.
Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe?
Yes.
Houlihan?
Aye.
Burris absent. Chapman? Desmond?
Aye.
Dowden Calavillo? Frost? Frericks? Gallardo?
Aye.
Gog? Gore absent. Guerrero?
Aye.
Harris? Haudashelt?
Aye.
Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Aye.
Nisley? Kozlowski? Lauren? Lozano?
Aye.
Sander? Saragosa?
Aye.
Schaefer?
Aye.
Stallard? Soon?
Aye.
Thomas? Vane? Vice Chair Saragosa?
Aye.
And Chair Kennedy.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now that's the end of our action items for the day. We'll move on to information items, which number 9 is the Federal Corrective Action Response. I believe Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, Eric Johnson, I'm the Deputy Executive Director of Operations for the newer board members. I wanted to first give a little bit of background. I know those of you that were on the board in November, we talked about this. The federal corrective action item before you today, we're bringing as an info item. We hope to come back next month with an action item for a recommended solution that the board would endorse, which is what I'll be talking about today. That's something under discussion. So a bit of background, again, for the board members who are new that were in the orientation this morning, I mentioned that there's 2 key roles that SACOG serves. For federal purposes, we are the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which encompasses all 6 counties. Under state law, we're a regional transportation planning agency just for 4 counties, so excluding El Dorado and Placer. And I bring that up now because there's 2 transportation agency partners in our region in El Dorado and Placer that are critical, and that has been an important part of this discussion about how we comply with the federal corrective action here. A bit more background. So historically, SACOG has held that MPO role, and we've worked in partnership with El Dorado and Placer counties. They've made decisions about federally funded projects in those counties, and we've again worked in coordination on our long-range plans over that, but really the decision-making was happening with those 2 bodies. At a statewide level, there has been a corrective action that was issued in the beginning of 2021 to Caltrans. And this is a practice that is happening in different forms in different parts of the state, but ultimately there were inconsistencies in the federal agencies or federal designated agencies like SACOG ultimately having the final control and say over projects that are funded with federal dollars, and not having non-federally designated entities making those final decisions. And there's two pieces of money which, we can talk about in greater detail in the future for new board members, but basically the two competitive funding sources that you'll hear about when we talk about our funding round that's coming up, that's actually out for applications right now. There are surface transportation block grant dollars and congestion mitigation and air quality, or CMAQ dollars. Those are federal dollars. SACOG gets to decide how those funds are used in the region, and those are the ones that are under discussion here today. So as I mentioned, this is a corrective action against Caltrans, but SACOG, as the MPO for this area, has been asked to come up with a response for how we would like to handle it in our region, because every area the state has slightly different ways that they can approach this. But there's three critical things we have to address. First, we cannot suballocate, which is kind of the interpretation of what was happening with El Dorado and Placer counties. We can't say you're guaranteed an amount of money based on population for those parts of the region. The second piece, which I made reference to, is that SACOG has to be involved in screening the projects, ensuring that these are the right projects for the types of restrictions on those federal funds. And then finally, that this board, SACOG, makes the final selection decision for funds that are federal for transportation projects. So since I was before you in November, I went over an initial proposal that had some suggestions for how we perhaps carve things out for El Dorado and Placer, so that SACOG would have an oversight role, but they would run processes that were specific to their counties. After many discussions with Caltrans and FHWA, it's become clear to us that that's just not acceptable, and that's also something consistent across the state, where the MPOs ultimately really need to have a consistent process across their regions. So we've been working closely with the executives at El Dorado and Placer transportation agencies, and we've also been in discussions with Caltrans and had one formal meeting with leadership at USDOT and Caltrans to talk about what issues specifically they had with the proposal that I shared with you in November, and what we might be able to do to resolve those issues. And so our revised proposal, which is based on those discussions that we've had, is as follows. First, we would introduce a process of having a policy-based target, and the funding round working group that you heard about from Christina earlier would be an essential part of coming up with some of the specifics about the type of targets and the board policy issues that would be applied to this. But as a framework, we would have policy based on our long-range plan. There's policy goals that we're supposed to be making progress on. We would establish targets for every county that would be based on those targets. And at the beginning of each funding round, we'd be able to say, here's an estimated range of money that would be available for each county. So you have a sense of how many projects to develop, what's the nature of funding available. But that would be something that would start here at the board level. So that would be a departure from El Dorado and Placer having a specific set aside of money. The second piece would be that we would begin to do a 6-county call for projects. Again, in the current funding round underway right now has limited to the 4 counties. And so going forward for federal funds only, we would have a 6-county regional call for projects. The third piece of our proposal is that we would establish a 6-county committee of experts to review and prioritize all projects. Right now, we have a technical committee that's reviewing the projects that your local staff are submitting, and we would just ensure that there are representatives from all 6 counties involved in that, who would do objective scoring of the project based on criteria that, again, are set by this board at the outset of the funding of each funding round. The fourth part of this would be that after we get that information back from the outside reviewers, SACOG staff would just take one final look to ensure we're meeting all the federal requirements, it's consistent with the policy recommendations and direction we've gotten from the board before we bring something back to you to say, here's the input we've gotten from the experts, here's our assessment of any issues that may be present with some of those projects on the list of prioritized recommendations. And then the final step in the proposal would be, as you're going to do as a board in May, make a final selection for projects for the entire 6-county area. So I just wanted to briefly touch on two pieces of that in a little bit more detail. So as I mentioned, policy-based targets, we would look at the available funding coming to SACOG as an MPO, and we would establish target recommendations to bring to the board, have the board approve those, and then publish those for all the counties to have an understanding of what's there. We'd also establish something that we're calling right now a priority program set aside, where essentially things like our Engage, Empower, Implement program, Spare the Air, other things that we have had at times competitively compete in the round, that as a board policy, you would say these things are of regional significance. We don't think they need to compete. We actually want to make a policy decision to fund these projects or programs. So that would be taken outside of what is available to counties, cities, and other entities to compete for. And then those targets would be published for the jurisdictions, and they would have that information to begin the outset of the funding round process. And then just briefly, I won't go through all these steps, but as I outlined before, there would be this new process for projects to come in. We would work with El Dorado and Placer, those transportation agencies, to coordinate with jurisdictions within those two counties, just on which projects are eligible, because again, while they're not federally recognized, El Dorado and Placer play important roles in establishing state level transportation plans for those two counties. And we would want to ensure that they're available to provide technical assistance to members in those two counties. And SACOG would be providing that role for every other county in the region. And then finally, as I mentioned, the recommendations would come through this new committee, through staff, and then the transportation committee and the board would make final decisions on this. So just to wrap up, as I mentioned, we're in discussions with Caltrans and FHWA. We're confident that we're much closer to a resolution than we have been in the past. We are required to work with Caltrans to have something approved by FHWA by June 30th to resolve the corrective action. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
To the chair. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, next, Supervisor Frost.
Eric, so this means that El Dorado and Placer will be part of the competitive rounds, that we normally were the 4 counties competitive, and they always had the autonomy to just decide what their projects were. They're now going to be competing for funding on just federal.
That is correct.
Okay, and how does, I'm assuming you're talking with their transportation agencies. I imagine that impacts their workload and their business model. Do you see this ultimately moving all under SACOG? So those transportation agencies will be eliminated, or?
No. Director Frost, can I just jump in here? We're working very closely with our partners up in El Dorado and Placer, and I hope our board members from those counties understand that. The challenge here is we're going to be tied together, whether we like it or not. The opportunity is, how do we actually make this work across all 6 counties? That's essentially what we're talking about. Those two agencies, El Dorado County Transportation Commission, PCTPA, know their counties really well. You have on-the-ground knowledge there. Right? We want to tap that, keep it, but we've got to fit it into a process now. And so I think we're very close. We're threading a needle that feels like it's getting narrower, but our job is to thread that. And we're threading it in partnership with El Dorado and Placer in a way that we are going to have a 6-county competitive round, but we want their involvement, we want their evaluation, their scoring, all of these things in a process that will meet the federal corrective action that's been given to us. So we're trying to figure out the rightful role of those agencies, because they have one, and important ones, but we're also trying to figure out how we do this. 2 years ago, you may have remembered the debate that we had at this board. That was another very hard, tough, challenging debate about whether individual cities right, and counties could get a formula by population. And I think we learned through that debate, you can't do that anymore. You may have been able to do that 10, 20 years ago, but that is not allowed anymore. So we are going to have to compete for funds. We're going to have to put forward projects that meet these federal performance criteria. And I know we'll probably get some other comments on this. Our job, I think, as you just heard, and even just the, the accolades that you gave former Chair Jennings, is to figure out how we have rural, suburban, and urban places all seen, all compete, right? And that we have different criteria for those kinds of projects, but we do that already in Yuba and Sutter in particular, and YOLO, and now we have to do it in all 6 counties. But the 2 RTPA partners will be absolutely engaged, involved as they are right now.
And I think that would be important to me if I was in that jurisdiction.
We are very well aware of, we're very well aware, and we have local knowledge on that ground, right, in those counties that we need to maximize and pull into this process.
And I also want to say, Eric, that I really appreciate your comment regarding the review committee, a qualified review committee, because in the past there's been.
Supervisor Frost's microphone is not on.
Yeah, yes. Mike?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, lean in a little more.
Sorry, we got problems here. I think what I wanted to say is that it's appreciated because the committee that's reviewing this is, it's like a think tank that is bringing, details from each jurisdiction, that each jurisdiction is so different. And I really appreciate that you qualified that. You will have a review committee that is qualified to do that. And so thank you for that.
Director Branscombe, followed by Director Thomas.
Thank you. This slide deck, I didn't see it in my materials. Is it available separately?
We can certainly send it to the board afterwards.
Please do. Secondly, is this slide deck a summary of a more detailed description of this whole process?
So in the staff report, there is actually a more detailed flow chart that is attached. So I tried to summarize.
I did see that.
Yeah.
But I was the flow chart is, I think it's a little inside baseball. If there is a more detailed document describing this process, it'd be very helpful.
Yeah, and Director Branscombe, that our intent is to bring that in February when we bring something for action. Given that it is in limbo, we decided to bring the information available to give you a bit of an update, acknowledging it's not completely polished.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thank you. Director Thomas.
Yes, thank you. As an El Dorado County Supervisor and as a member of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, I would like to sincerely thank our SACOG staff for working so collaboratively with both Placer County and El Dorado County to understand the demands of this corrective action and then find the opportunities that can work for not only our respective agencies, but for the SACOG board and the region as a whole. And I think, you've been through several iterations of this and have been working very, very closely with our respective agencies and, just really want to acknowledge that. And, thank you for your acknowledgement of how important the local voice is, especially to some of our regions that don't fit into a more urban-centric model. And I think you're finding the balance here. And I look forward to this moving forward and it working, for the region. So, as well as our respective areas. So thank you very much for all your efforts on this.
Director Soon.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. Question, maybe suggestion, Eric. First of all, I just appreciate your expertise on this issue. I always learn a lot from you. I was wondering, what I've heard through, as many of you know, I work in the flood world. We heard to look at transportation as a way of funding project, because there's a lot of funds out there that are linked. It's through transportation, but also as ties to flood and water. And I was wondering, would this give you an opportunity to given that how affected our region was, would this give you an opportunity to maybe better compete if we, look through that lens as well as we look at projects? And whether it needs to be a charge of this or not, I don't know. That's my question. But
Yeah.
Has that been considered?
So, I mean, that's an excellent point in terms of the linkages to overall infrastructure needs for the region. We are working internally on, what's our approach to competitive grants. And so our Policy and Innovation Committee next month is going to hear an advocacy update and kind of where we're focusing federally. And so I think this is a narrow technical issue that we need to resolve with FHWA, but certainly I think the banner that those of you who were here last year heard is that these are the funds that come to SACOG by formula. There is an infinite amount more money competitively on a federal level, and we have to come together as a region to go after that.
I do think that's a really important point, and I'm not trying to downplay, right, all of your anxieties across this entire table about, will I get my fair share, right? You are going to ask that question, not just in El Dorado and Placer, but total funding that comes through this process that we're talking about right now is about 7% of our long-range plan. 7, single digits, right? Super important money, 7%. And I'm going to say what I had sort of teed up for our work plan presentation, which we'll probably have to cut short for good reason this morning. But our focus, and I want you all to keep in mind, as much as you're going to ask the question about, am I getting my fair share, is, are we punching above our weight at the state and federal level? Because that is where the money comes in. We have a new revolving match program that we put money in our 4-county funding round and allowed for local project sponsors to get federal and state funds, right? And so, and I would also say what's exciting and to come is we are now, and some of you know this, we're trying to break our own silos here regionally, and we're now engaging and talking to flood control, wildfire resiliency, utility districts, right, to figure out how do we actually work together across the 6 counties, because the story we have to tell and the need, the investment in this region, right, is going to be maximized by us actually banding together as 6 counties and actually going to go to the state capital in DC. So I think if that's where you're heading with that, Director Soon,
Yeah. I
do think there's a lot there's a lot that is very complex and technical about this particular process here, but I am hoping the silver lining and us coming through this will actually allow us to be more effective pulling down state and federal money.
Great, thank you.
Vice Chair Saragosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to thank staff as well, to Director Thomas's point, for working with EDCTC and Placer County. I will say, though, just to level set it as well, though, I mean, this is not unique to us, as James mentioned earlier. I mean, SCAG is going through this. You have Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Riverside that are going through a very similar process as we are. So if Federal Highway Authority, rejects them, I always say, like with Green Means Go, we wanted to establish ourselves. In this case, I don't mind drifting a little bit behind Los Angeles and some of these that are big agencies like SCAG in the Bay Area that are going to fight and fight very hard in order to if they don't accept the corrective action. So I think there's more, to be continued here on that front. But I again want to thank James and the staff for really working hard with us, as well as with Caltrans and with the federal government to try to come to a reasonable agreement here. But again, if for some reason we get rejected, we're going to be in good company with a lot of other folks across the state. So more to come.
Thank you. And any other questions?
Yeah, through the chair, if I
Yes.
may. Just very quickly, I want to echo the comments of our colleagues in El Dorado. I think the operative word you threw out was anxiety. We have a great deal of anxiety over this, as you well know. We very much appreciate your working with us in partnership to try to come up with solutions that relieve that moving forward. We're going to be very, very engaged as we move forward on this, and we look forward to your partnership and your continued support in making sure that we don't feel as though in a 6-county competitive round we are losing out.
And Director Joyner, I mean, Vice Chair Saragosa just mentioned this. I mean, I will say, and it's a smaller pot of money, but Green Means Go, right? I mean, look at every single jurisdiction has supported it. 26 of 28 have green zones. And we now have a small pot of 33 million that we're going to be bringing to you. And we won't make everybody happy. We won't fund every project, right? But that's a funding program that all 6 counties are participating in, and everybody sees a piece of it. because I think we've done it organically and bottom up and with all your staff. And so I think that's a bit of a template for what could be. So in addition, of course, to us advocating with you for the third track capital corridor, the Placer Sacramento Gateway project, right? I'm not trying to say you shouldn't have anxiety, right? As we've talked about, understood. But our commitment is not that we can guarantee you a dollar amount. Our commitment is we can guarantee you the partnership and the certainty and the transparency.
I'm going to go to the screen here, Director Haderschelt.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I want to align my comments with both Supervisor Thomas and Mayor Joyner, and say we will be very vigilant in our being engaged, might be super engaged in this process, right? The roads go east and west, and I know in PCTPA world where I'm also the vice chair of the Capital Corridors Joint Powers Authority, we look at our projects as ensuring mobility, not just for our region, but for the entire region. Perfect example is Baseline Riego, right? Starting in the city of Roseville and ending in Sutter County. So I think it's going to be, and I appreciate this about Mr. Corliss's approach to this, working with his counterparts at PCTPA and El Dorado. He recognizes the interest of the 4-county region is also, dependent upon the actions and interest of El Dorado and Placer. And so I provided my name to sit on the policy working group along with Mayor Joyner, who will be far better at it than I am, but it just underscores how critically important this is. Maybe a little unfortunate the Federal Highway Administration did it, but both agencies have been around a long time and served the region well by not looking at themselves myopically, but looking at the region as a whole. So thank you, Mr. Corliss, and look forward to the future process.
Director Gallardo.
Well, thank you. No surprise, as you're hearing from El Dorado and Placer County, I do want to echo what Director Joyner's comments. Of course, there's some anxiety. There's a great deal of anxiety, and as expected as anybody else would be in the same position. And so, but I do look forward to engagement with everyone and to see how we can win-win for everyone involved. But it is important as we go through the process that we acknowledge and address the concerns.
Thank you. Director Dowden Calvillo.
Yes, I just wanted to echo the comments from my colleagues here. I serve on the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency as well. I am new here on SACOG, but I have heard great things about the collaboration. Really, change is difficult. I think we all recognize that. It does bring some anxiety, but this is something we were utilizing a particular mechanism for a long time. So it's important that we do recognize that. But it's also important that we recognize that we need to work together as a region. And I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish in the next coming months. And I also like the vice chair's suggestion that maybe we don't have to be first out of the gate because they've got maybe some bigger fish to fry. So, but very much looking forward to some success on this. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Questions? Seeing none, are there any public comments on this, Madam Clerk?
There is a public comment. Pulling that up now. Woodrow Deloria from EDCTC would like to speak. Shall I go ahead and allow him to talk now?
Please do.
Hi, Woody. This is Lynette. You're ready to speak.
Thank you, Lynette. Good morning, board members. Welcome to all the new representatives on the SACOG board. This is Woody Deloria, the Executive Director of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. I just wanted to thank James and Eric and the SACOG team for extensive coordination and partnership over the last 18 months. This has been a very challenging process. As many of you have suggested, this is a change that does cause some anxiety among two agencies that have been doing business in a different fashion for 30 plus years. But I just want to acknowledge that, James and Eric have stood by us in strong partnership with the FHWA, even at times when FHWA didn't want us at the table. So really, really appreciate that from SACOG staff. And we're going to overcome this anxiety by having a great regional funding round in a few years where we all are able to submit great projects and contribute to the investments across the region. So thank you very much to James and his staff.
Thank you for calling in. Appreciate it. Any others?
There's no other public comment.
All right, then, if Mr. Corliss, if you don't have any other comments, then we'll move on. All right, we'll move on to information item number 10. Look ahead for 2023. Ms. Lizon.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually a tag team between me and James, and we are also mindful of time, so we will be trimming it as much as we can. So go ahead, James.
All right. Let the trimming begin. Okay. So really what we wanted to do was, as we told our new board members at orientation, just give you all a sense, right? Both new board members, but returning board members, what's coming up this year? What can you look ahead to? So if you go to the next slide, and keep going. The thing that, so the thing I want to remind you all, and I mentioned this when I gave my remarks for outgoing Chair Jennings, we updated our strategic plan last year for the first time in 12 years, and I really appreciate a lot of input in that. You have a hard copy at your seats, and I really recommend you read the hard copy. And as I said to the new board members this morning, the quotes in there, I guess we say so, are from all of you. They're from what the SACOG board members said last year. And as I like to repeat often, the one quote among many that I love in that is, SACOG is the voice of jurisdictions. Without SACOG, nobody would hear us. So we're here not just because we are, and I know this can still get discussion going, so have at it despite the time. We're here because we are in service of a better future. We're here, I believe, because we are trying to leave this region better than we found it. We're here to actually accelerate and leave to our next generations a vibrant and thriving Sacramento region for all. So next slide. And we have a mission statement that we convene and connect the region to advance what I would call a triple bottom line future: equity, economy, and environment. And so next slide. So we have 4 priorities, and you click through these quickly. Thank you. So I'm gonna go through those. Those are basically out of our last long range plan. They do also just illustrate that while many people know us for transportation, we just had a big transportation discussion, right? This board and this agency and our JPA bylaws bring us together to tackle the really hard, challenging issues. Air quality, pollution, agriculture, rural economies, like that is why you're here, is to tackle the hard problems of the region and the challenges that any one of you as single jurisdictions alone can't necessarily take on. So we have 4 priorities, and if you go to the next slide.
I think you handed it.
Okay, that's it. Okay. So anyway, you got a strategic plan. It's in front of you. Take a look at that. I know it's very high level, and that is why we have work plans. And so I'll hand it over to Casey to tell you a little bit about what's coming up this year to help us implement the strategic plan.
Thank you, James.
But before you do, Casey, I just want to, for a time check, I don't want to give short shrift to any staff presentation, but if we do the estimated time, we're going to go over the 12 o'clock time, which I loathe to do. So if we can try to muscle through this quickly, that'd be great.
Yes, and in fact, we have touched on many of the activities that will be coming up this year, so I hope that the image will just lock it in your mind and we'll be good to go. So biggest item that we have going forward to implement our strategic plan is the update of our long-range transportation plan. That is the blueprint. This year, you will be engaging on pathways. That is different alternatives of the future, and we will be doing extensive public outreach, at least one pop-up in all of your communities and also with partners. And so we will be looking to you to help to get that engagement within your communities and partner agencies. Moving on, you will be seeing the Engage, Empower, Implement program framework coming forth, and we hope with that action that we will have a call for applications so that we can get this community-driven planning grant program going. Next, we talked about the funding round working group. We've talked about funding opportunities from state and federal grant sources. We have talked about trails, so you know what is coming. We also have, hopefully very soon, we'll be kicking off the mobility zones. That's what's covered by that photo. Mobility zones project. This is funded by a RAISE planning grant. It is to develop across the 6 counties a sustainable and equitable mobility strategy. And we have a partner in a community-based organization, Civic Thread, to be doing engagement on that. That will be very closely coordinated with our blueprint update and engagement there, as well as with Engage, Empower, Implement, because there is a heavy community engagement involved in all of this. This is also a key reason, as well as the extensive outreach in our blueprint, why we are coming forth to try to get an extension to the blueprint plan, which, shoot, thought that was the slide. Anyway, I'm getting to that. That's a cliffhanger for you. We also, as you've heard already, we've talked about Green Means Go. That is our program to accelerate infill development in locally adopted green zones. This is advocacy will be also very important, so we will continue to pursue funding for Green Means Go because there are many needs there, as well as the extension to the adoption date for our blueprint plan. There you go. I closed the cliffhanger there. As I also mentioned, we've already talked about the Race Equity and Inclusion Initiative, so that is focused on implementation of our Racial Equity Action Plan. It will be coming before the board with every meeting, following every meeting of the REI working group. And that is a brief look ahead to your work for 2023. It's a lot, it's important. We are looking forward to working with all of you. Now, James does have some comments on the challenges.
I first saw this photo and I thought they found a picture of me in high school. No, wait, I didn't. I was never that athletic. This is supposed to be hurdles and challenges. We have a very creative graphics team here at SACOG. You get to learn them. And I, in the interest of time, I will give you just one of the, I mean, I was going to go on for hours about our challenges, but, and our hurdles. And I said this to the Sacramento City Council because we just wrapped up all of our tour to every single city and every single board of supervisors. My definition of success, but also our challenge. Success in my mind means that the urban core and the jurisdictions within look at rural areas and they care about them and understand their health and their success as key to the success and the future of the region. And rural areas and small jurisdictions look at the urban core and want it to succeed because they understand that a healthy urban core is key to the success of this region. And we can have those and should have those debates and discussions about money and fair share and everything else. And keep your eyes on the big picture and the prize, right? Which is us working together effectively as a region. So that's my challenge for you all, building on the themes of the last couple of items. And I look forward to working with you through all those. And we've got a lot of great work this year. As you can tell, that long-range plan and blueprint is key. So we're really excited. We're really excited to come back out to all you probably got sick of us in all those city council presentations and board of soups, but we're coming back. We're doing pop-up events. So we'll be very engaged this year. And the Land Use and Natural Resources Committee will be the overseeing committee primarily for the blueprint plan this year. So if you're wondering what this lunar thing is, it's very important and you'll be excited to be on there. Okay.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Is there any public comment on this, Madam Chair, Madam Clerk?
There's no public comment.
Okay.
Not hearing anything.
Okay. Excited to introduce our new state lobbyists, Kiana Valentine and Chris Lee from Politico Group. So I'm going to go ahead and call them up here. We're focusing this year on sponsoring legislation to extend the timeline for our blueprint adoption. And there's some information in your packet about the benefits to doing that. It gives us more time for deeper community engagement. It allows for integration of some of the major projects that you just heard Casey talking about, and engagement iteration with all of you and other partners, and also to align with our mega regional partners and the timing and adoption of their plans as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris and Kiana.
Good morning, Chair Kennedy, members of the board. Chris Lee, partner with Politico Group. I'm going to do a quick presentation outline here. First, we really want to just do some brief introductions of our team. We also want to hit the SACOG sponsored legislation that Sabrina just mentioned. Then we'll do a time check and see if there's some time to talk about the budget, legislative membership leadership, as well as our broader policy outlook for 2023. So to start off, my name is Chris Lee. I've been with Politico Group since July. Prior to that, I was with the California State Association of Counties for 9 years, working on housing, land use, and transportation issues. And so Kiana and I have both been privileged to work with all of your staff in that prior capacity, as well as many of the members of the board. So we're very excited to be back in this role, working directly with you. Prior to my service at CSAC, I was with the County of Yolo for 5 years. Director Stollard was one of my first meetings, I think, when I started my role there. And so, again, really happy to be working for this region in our new capacity. And with that, I'll let Kiana introduce herself.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. Kiana Valentine, partner with Politico Group. I have a very similar resume as Chris. I've been partner at Politico Group for 4 years now, focusing on housing, land use, and transportation issues, regional governance, local government issues. Spent 13 years at CSAC prior to that. So that's where Chris and I met and worked together for a number of years together. Prior to that, a couple years in the legislature, a couple years in Congress, and that rounds out my experience. So thrilled to be here. Thanks so much.
Great, and with that, we will move on and talk a little bit more about the sponsored legislation. So as Sabrina mentioned, and as the packet lays out in a lot of good detail, the main change in the bill is really updating the deadline for the next blueprint to 2025. Why are we doing that? A couple of main points. Improved mega-regional alignment gets SACOG much closer to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and SACOG deadlines for their SCS update, but also to really focus on that triple bottom line value that James mentioned: equity, environment, and economy. The RAISE grant is going to help this MPO improve its process for community outreach and project selection, and allowing that grant work to inform the SCS process is something that we think members of the legislature will see as a very valuable effort and an important component of getting that deadline extension approved. In terms of the logistics of this, we have our bill drafted. Cecilia Aguiar-Curry from Yolo County and also has a foot in the Bay Area is going to sponsor the legislation for us, and we're very close to having that ready to introduce and go across the desk. And so really the next steps for this and things that the board members here can help us with is outreach to your legislative delegation. You've got 6 brand new members of your 12-member delegation here. Several of them are on important committees, budget committees over housing and transportation, as well as the Transportation Policy Committee. And so raising the voice of the jurisdictions in support of the legislation will be very important. And again, on that triple bottom line theme, engaging supportive groups at the regional, local, and statewide level, really focused on equity, environment, and economy. So business, equity groups, all sorts of local and regional groups that you all have great relationships with. That'll help us be successful in the legislature. So that's a really high-level overview. I think I'll pause briefly if there's any questions on this, and then we can do a bit of a time check.
Any questions?
So the bill's going in tomorrow?
It's ready to go in tomorrow. We have a meeting tomorrow. I can't believe tomorrow is Friday with Aguiar-Curry's staff, and we're going to talk about timing and all the nuts and bolts there.
I feel your pain. I have to get one in myself.
We're about a month ahead of the game, though, because the Legislative Council deadline is tomorrow. So we've got it fully drafted and ready to go.
Continue.
We will be very brief in the rest of the presentation, recognizing some of the time constraints we had. I can do a quick overview of the state budget for you all and try to provide some context for what this means for SACOG and its objectives and priorities in the coming year. The long and the short of it is, after 2 years of historical budget surpluses to the tune of $200 billion surplus over a 2 fiscal year period, that situation has changed, and it's changed rather rapidly. So the there's been weakened tax receipts over the last 6 months. That's resulting in a $22.5 billion budget deficit, a budget problem that needs to be closed in the coming fiscal year. Governor Newsom released his January budget last week. Some of the key takeaways, and the Senate Fiscal Committee had a hearing on this yesterday, and we heard from the Legislative Analyst's Office. He's being very reserved in his strategies for how to close this deficit since it is January, and we still have the April tax receipt deadline coming up, and a looming recession. Is it going to happen? Is it not? What's going on with inflation? All of those things are still major factors, and we don't know where the state is going to be in a few more months' time. Funding delays, pausing on expenditures of dollars from this year, pushing those out into future years, outright reductions in programs. Last year, we saw historic investments of one-time money into programs of importance to SACOG, such as transportation, transit, and housing programs. So there's some implications for that built into the budget. Fund shifts, they're called trigger cuts, but really there's this trigger mechanism to restore some of the cuts built into the governor's budget should the revenue picture get better over the next few months. So fingers crossed for that, and then some revenue and borrowing. The governor's budget doesn't tap reserves right now, recognizing that it could get better, but it could also get worse. So we're going to have an eye on that over the next couple of months. So in the transportation space, the biggest area that I think is of concern is your advocates, probably to you all, is a proposed reduction in transit operations and capital funding to the tune of $2 billion over the next couple of years. To be clear, that was general fund money, one-time money from last year. If we didn't have that surplus in the last couple of years, we probably wouldn't have had that money now. But now that it's on the table, and we have been, as a state and a community, getting ready to go after some of those funds, it's really difficult to watch the potential of those being cut in half, right? And so it's a mixture of cuts, $2 billion reduction, and then some delays. So instead of $2 billion this year, $2 billion next year, $1 billion this year, $500 million next year, and $500 million the year after that. The reaction has been relatively swift in the legislature. If anyone is a Twitter follower, right, Senator Wiener, Assemblymember Friedman, some of the folks really focused on transit funding are saying, not on our watch, right? So there's a lot more to come on this. Given the time, I will just note that there's a lot more detail in the board packet on some of these other budget things. I'll mention too, there are some proposed reductions in a couple of housing programs. Again, those were one-time dollars from the budget last year that would be cut and delayed into future years. So the California Dream for All, Cal Home Ownership Program, and ADU investments are proposed to have some impacts. And if that's the last of the budget slide, let me just a quick reminder, but you are all probably familiar with the process. We are very early. It is the January budget. We will not have budget hearings in earnest until March. Then we have the governor's May revise, which really kicks off the serious negotiations leading into the adoption of the budget in mid-June, and then with the possibility to amend that budget, pass trailer bill, do all sorts of other things through the end of the legislative session in September. So long way to go on the budget. Thank you.
And pivoting back to the legislature, mentioned already 6 of 12 newly elected SACOG delegation members, reflective of huge turnover in the Assembly and the Senate. 30% of Assembly members, a quarter of the senators. We've all seen in the media discussion about the transition from Speaker Rendon to Speaker Rivas in July. And because of that, there was kind of a deal not to make a lot of committee changes. So very few committee changes in the policy areas of most interest to SACOG on both the Senate and the Assembly side. Looking at the policy outlook with the executive branch, briefly, continued implementation of the Climate Action Plan for transportation infrastructure. This is going to inform all sorts of competitive project selection, as well as projects on the state highway system that might be nominated for inclusion in your regional plan. We're looking at the long-term revenue stream as we transition away from gas-powered vehicles to zero-emission vehicles, continuing to study the road charge, and thinking about how to roll out that ZEV transition.
Chris, sorry. Do you mind just going back to the last slide, and then I think we probably need to wrap. Can you go back to the last slide on the members? Perfect. And am I going to really cut you off if I, because I think we probably need to move on. I just want to make one point on this, and please reinforce this. When this board got engaged in Green Means Go as a legislative push, and Director Sander knows this, Director Gorder, DeSiragosa, many of you got involved. You used your personal connections, you used your relationships, you weighed in, you went to press conferences, you went into the Capitol, you spoke with the members, right, at coffees. This is exactly the same kind of thing we're going to need this year. Again, I'm proud that our entire bipartisan delegation supported Green Means Go a couple of years ago. We need exactly the same support for this SES extension bill. And because we have so many new members, and I know many of you know them, we have a survey and a link. We will keep that information very much to us. But if you can let us know your connections, that would be remarkably helpful. We will only use it with you, but then it allows us to understand, okay, who knows who. And so with that, unless I'm missing anything else, all right, thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you. Any final questions from the board before we move on? None. Do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
And we're going to table item number 12 out of respect for everybody's time, as I'm watching more and more seats become vacant. So we will table that for future time. There is a report in the packet. So that brings us to item 13, reports. I will start with a very brief report and let you know that the length of this meeting is not indicative of what's going to happen in the following 11 months or 10. I will say that I have had the opportunity to go out and meet many of you in your jurisdictions and take a look at your jurisdictions. Learned a whole lot. Who knew the first Toyota dealership was in Placerville? Who knew there's a telephone museum in Roseville? Supervisor Bradford told me way too much that I needed to know about the Silver Dollar Saloon. But it's been truly a pleasure to get to know you personally. I think that this is an organization of relationships, and so it's important that we do that. That's why it's great we're all here together for the first time, or the second time in a very long time. But if I have not reached out to you yet, I promise you I will, and I hope that if you don't have time, you'll at least dedicate some of your staff to have an opportunity for me to meet and also take a look at what your community is and reacquaint myself for those areas I haven't been for a while. So that's all I've got today, other than I do want to thank Director Harris. I want to thank you for your comments during when we were addressing Mr. Jennings. You truly did lower the bar for what's a successful chair. I think I can do that, so I appreciate that. And with that, we'll go on to board comments, reports of any kind. Mr. Corliss.
Very quickly, remember your committees will be remote this year. So in order to try to ease the re-entry here, committees all remote, board meetings all in person. We do give you that option, but we really love to see you here in person for board meetings. True to our racial equity action plan, 3 board meetings this year off-site. We are not doing an external study tour. We are going to get deeper into this region. 3 off-site board meetings. The first, April 20th in Placer County, we hope. The next will be in Yuba County, and the last this year will be in Sacramento County, and we will do the other 3 counties next year. So we will give you heads up notice so that you can make sure if it's a little further away, you get there on time. And one after one, the last of those will probably be Sacramento County with the Chair Kennedy, and we'll be doing a tour of the district and the area, probably in South Sacramento. Stay tuned for that. So 3 offsite board meetings. We're super excited about that. And then final, we put a note in my executive director update. Please, I can't make you read it, but if it's too long or not informative enough, let me know. But I hope you get it, because it's our effort to try to explain what's coming up and what's hot at SACOG. We have 2 dates that we're trying to get a regional forum together on the blueprint, June 16th, June 2nd or June 16th. Please let Lynette know here by tomorrow, COB, which of those works for you. I know we can't make it work for everybody. We'll do our best to make it work. And that's going to be a forum that'll be, I think, really well timed, where we've done a lot of outreach and we've heard a lot of feedback around the long range plan. So let us know which of those dates work, and we'll see you online in February at the committees, and we'll see you in person at the board later in February.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments of the executive director at this time? There being none, our next meeting is on February 16th, right here. And again, welcome to all the new members. Thank you, Mr. Jennings, for your service last year, and we are adjourned.